Hey guys, today we are breaking down the Gettysburg Address. Now a little backstory here. Very famous speech. I hope everyone knows came from Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States of America. One of my personal favorites, honestly. Give me a like if you agree, if he's one of your personal favorites. The day is November 19th, 1863. Not too long after, I think a couple months after the actual battle of Gettysburg between the Union and the Confederates. One of the bloodiest battles on American soil, by American hands. Bloodiest battles. The battle was over 3 days, from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. Like I said, a couple months before November. And it was a pivotal point in the Civil War against Robert E. Lee and against the Confederates to gain the upper hand for us to get them to surrender. Now, with the culmination of events, the speech, even though very short, coming in at only 272 words, was monumental. A speech remembered, heard across the nation, of us once again being a union, united in the act, in the cause, in the pursuit of freedom. Now this time I want to read this for you. Instead of us breaking it down, going right into it, I'm going to read it, then we will break it down. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it. Far beyond our poor power to add or detract, the world will little note nor long remember that what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not die in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Lincoln realized what happened that day, back in July of 1863. Men against men, brothers against brothers, neighbors against neighbors. In the pursuit to keep our nation whole, to end slavery, of course, and to note that all men are created equal. He recalls that in the very beginning. Dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Bouncing back off of when our forefathers brought forth this new continent 77 years ago. Now score actually represents the number 20. It's like an old term for 20. So we got 4 score times 20 gives us 80 plus 7 gives us a total of 87 years ago, which brings us to the beautiful year of 1776, baby. So he goes back and references them, our forefathers who made this nation, who came over and announced and believed that all men were created equal in liberty. And they were dedicated to this idea that we are all created equal. Now fast forward 87 years. Fast forward 87 years. We haven't even made it a whole century yet. And we have a great civil war. Hopefully the last of its kind. Testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Gosh, this reminds me of just nations over nations, like over time, right? Like we are truly, America's truly one of the first nations to have a government by the people. It's not a dictatorship. It's not an oligarchy. It doesn't have a king. It doesn't have a family. It's solely by the people. We created a government. Oh, goodness. The forefathers did such a great job of creating the Declaration of Independence and creating our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. I mean, that really, truly kept us together in this nation. And he's bouncing off of that Abraham, Mr. President Lincoln. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that nation, the US of A, might live. It's altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. It's undoubtedly that they should do this. That they should dedicate this field as a portion of this field as a final resting place for those people who've come to give their lives. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate it. Talking about him, the people that were there, the living, non-participating people, not the living people who were not in the war, who didn't actually fight in the war, just the citizens, right? We cannot consecrate. We cannot hollow it. We cannot dedicate it. Now, consecrate means like set aside, like for a holy, for a good, for an honoring purpose. Hallowed ground is just, it's like, let's look it up. Let's ask our friend Chat GPT. Define hollow ground. Refers to a land or a place that is considered sacred, holy, consecrated. Yeah, kind of goes off those other words of dedicated and consecrated. It implies that the ground's been set apart for a special religious, spiritual, or ceremonial purpose. Very, very historically significant, like battlefields, such as Gettysburg, right? Set aside. This is a thing that only can be done in honor of those who have come. Only the brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it. Only them. Only them. Far above our power to add or detract, far above anything that anyone else has done. This world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. The world's going to go on and now remember that ceremony, so to speak, but they should not forget the lives, the reason, the people, the men who fought for the freedom and for the union and for uniting a nation once again. Rather, as he says, rather, it is for us today, even so today, I mean us, me and you right here, right now, to be dedicated to the unfinished work. I believe any nation continuing to grow is always unfinished. You can always be better in multiple faucets. At that time, he's talking about to dedicate it is for the people at that time, those citizens from the new freedom, from the new birth of our nation, to complete the unfinished work for which those who fought have thus far nobly advanced. For those who already put the best foot forward and fought and literally gave their life for. Going back to their devotion, or going ahead of it, to their devotion, their increased devotion, that we honor these dead, because they gave their last full measure of devotion. They gave it all. I'm going to highlight that, man. That is good. They gave their last full measure of devotion. Devotion to the unfinished work. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have not died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. A new birth of freedom. That the government, what a way to finish this speech. That a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Man, it's a humbling experience to look back at your past and see where you've come from, both as an individual but also as a nation. Especially here, as of late, there's been a lot of news and politics on such a grand scale, especially here in the U.S. with the recent election. But it is up to us to have this new birth of freedom, to continue it on. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth. That the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish. And let us not forget, it is the people. It is the people. You have a lot of power as a person, as an individual in this nation. A lot of opportunity. I know we easily forget that, especially when things go south, both politics and agendas and on every level of government, both local, county, state, and let alone federal. But it is up to you, the people, to withhold the new birth of freedom, to withhold the unfinished work. Now that is a breakdown of the speech. In conclusion, I want us to look at the actual timeline of this. Think about it. July 1st through the 3rd, the battle happens. Lots of men die. Bloodiest battle ever. Let's look that up real quick. Lots of men die. Yeah. Again, the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War. Estimated casualties, 23,000. Union Army, 28,000. Confederate Army. Total, both sides, around 51,000. Gosh, that's a lot of people. Die in the fight for the freedom. So the battle happens. Fast forward some more months. November happens. And then when they give him this speech, when Lincoln gave this speech, and when did Lincoln die? April 15th. November. So that spring, man. That spring. He made it to the winter, gave the speech during the winter. That spring, he went and passed away about 2 years later that spring. So he had 2 more years after it, but still. What a peaceful time that was. I can imagine the stress you went through. But keep that up. The unfinished work, as in you, the people. Even so today, even years and decades and centuries later, you, the person watching this video, you are the people of the government. You are part of this government, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Till next time, thanks guys.